Part 23. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 222. What happened? Seeing Sumu turn around, Shirley Yang asked. Those water wasps were sucked into the bottom of the bamboo raft. At this time, Mina Yuping took a flashlight and shined it at the edge of the bamboo raft, and then between the gaps in the bamboo raft, and answered in a deep voice. As soon as he said this, everyone else also discovered the situation. The mood I had just relaxed a little was lifted up again. We must leave this place quickly, otherwise when more and more water bees gather and they all attach to the bamboo raft, the weight of the bamboo raft will increase and it will definitely sink, Hubei said nervously. Sumu felt that this was the truth, so he no longer hesitated and began to hold up the pennant attentively. Everyone was paying attention to the situation in the water, even if they felt that the dense water wasps were it made people's scalp numb, but they still couldn't help but look more. The danger was at their feet, so how could they ignore it? Soon, everyone discovered that the weight of the bamboo raft was increasing little by little. Although the draft position of the bamboo raft has not changed for the time being, but if it continues like this, when the weight of the bamboo raft continues to increase, the bamboo raft will eventually sink. At that time, the river water will overflow the bamboo raft, and then cover the feet. Those water wasps will definitely swarm them, and they will be in dire straits when the time comes. They won't be able to escape even if they want to. What should I do? If this continues, we will have to wait for those water wasps to come and suck blood. Fat Wang was very anxious. Fatty, don't be impatient. The number of these water wasps cannot sink the bamboo raft yet, so we will be fine for the time being. Shirley Yang opened her mouth and comforted her. I can't figure it out now. Mina Yuping said thoughtfully. What do you want to say? Everyone looked at him suspiciously. I'm wondering about the purpose of these water wasps. What's the meaning? Everyone was puzzled. Mina Yuping continued and said these water wasps that are parasitic on the human figurines made by the art of war are placed and suspended above the water. It must be to make it easier for the water wasps to fall into the water. I hatched and grew up, but I didn't understand why King Xian did this. When Men Yuping said this, Hubei instantly understood the meaning of Men Yuping's words, and then said, I understand. Logically speaking, if you want to pass through this water area, you will definitely choose to take a raft. But the water wasp cannot leave the water at all, so it will not cause any harm to the people on the raft. Is this what you mean? Who? Ba asked Mina Yuping, and sure enough Mina Yuping nodded and agreed with his conjecture, and then said if the way these water wasps attack people is to stick to the bottom of the raft, they will wait until the raft is destroyed. It would be too stupid to drag the vehicle until it sinks and then attack it. That's right, even if these water pigeons doubled their weight, they wouldn't be able to sink the raft. Shirley Yang also understood, but felt that she still had a lot of doubts. What's the point of getting these water wasps? When Shirley Yang said this, everyone fell into deep thought. Sumu thought for a while and said the method of Xian Wang must be more than these. Since he used the evil technique to create so many human figurines, he must not only be for raise those water bees, and the great thing about King Xian's evil technique is that everyone doesn't know what his next move will be. Everyone felt that what Sumu said was very reasonable, and they were more wary of King Xian's methods. Speaking of which, this King Xian is really a cunning guy. Hubei clicked his tongue and said, and the others expressed their approval. Isn't it cunning and sinister? Just this trick of using figurines and water bees made everyone unable to guess what the sacrifice was. What exactly is Wang's method? I don't know what will happen next. Fortunately, we have now left the waters where the saber-toothed salmon live. Otherwise, it would be really scary if there were both saber-toothed salmon and water grubs in the water, Shirley Yang said with emotion. When Fatty Wang heard this, he said cheerfully, that's not necessarily the case. Everyone was stunned when they heard this, and some didn't understand why Fatty Wang was so sure. Then they heard Fatty One continue to say, "You think those knife-toothed salmon eat people, and these water pigeons also want to suck blood, neither of them are vegetarians." Yes, as the saying goes, there is no room for two tigers in one mountain. If these two creatures come together in the same water, why not fight to the death? When everyone thought about it, it seemed that this was indeed the case. If the two creatures came together, there was really no telling what kind of scene it would be. The teeth of the saber-toothed salmon were sharp, but the water wasps were also numerous. And once it sticks to the body, it is not so easy to get rid of. At that time, all they have to do is sit back and watch the tiger fight. Fatty, you really think about it? Sumu couldn't help but give a thumbs up to Fatty Wang. At this time, they had already left the waters of the saber-toothed salmon. Although they couldn't see such a scene, everyone still had to admire it. Fatty Wang's imagination. Maybe there are no traces of saber-toothed salmon in this area of water. Is it for this reason? While everyone was talking, they saw a huge door appearing in front of them. The door was almost pressing against the cave wall. It was built at the top and looked very tall and huge. At this time, the door was wide open, as if waiting for everyone to enter. Why is there such a big door here? Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 223. Why is there such a big door here? Everyone was confused, and Sumu supported the bamboo raft and slowly floated towards the gate. The bamboo raft was not very fast, and it carried everyone into the giant gate. "Take off your mask." After entering the giant door, Min Yuping opened his mouth and took off the mask on his face first. Seeing this, others also took off the masks on their faces. They were wearing masks before because of that part. In the floating corpse water area, those floating corpses floating on the water will produce corpse poison after their bodies rot. They put them on for safety. Now that they have left that section of water for some distance, these masks can naturally be taken off. Mu also took off the mask and put it in his bag. He rubbed the tight areas on his face. Although he couldn't feel the pain of being strangled, the feeling of the mask being close to the skin was still very uncomfortable. Others seemed to feel freed from their restraints after taking off their masks. Peacock, who was wearing this kind of gas mask for the first time, took 2 deep breaths after taking off his mask, but he forgot. I realized that the environment in the cave was not as good as outside. I choked and coughed several times due to the dull air. "Are you okay?" Shirley Yang asked. Although she didn't like Peacock's behavior of clinging to Sumu, Peacock is a woman like herself after all. She also has some life-saving skills, but Peacock is an ordinary person who has never experienced this. The fear was justifiable, so Shirley Yang rarely cared about Peacock. Peacock shook his head when he heard this, and after the cough passed, he smiled at Shirley Yang and said, "Thank you, I'm fine." Hearing what she said, Shirley Yang stopped talking to her and took out a strong flashlight from her bag. She turned on the strong flashlight and looked around. Only then did everyone realize that the space here is larger than the outside. The space of the cave is much larger, and it is also filled with hanging human figurines. The number is even greater than outside. I don't know how many more. They are so dense that people can't help but feel panicked and irritated when they look at them. Damn it! Why are there so many evil figurines here? Fat Wang looked at the densely packed human figurines and couldn't help but curse. The expressions on other people's faces were also not so good looking, and they were all shocked by these human figurines. Even Sumu didn't expect that in such a big place, there were actually such human figurines hidden in the cave. Everyone once again scolded King Xian in their hearts, and did not dare to relax any more. They began to carefully follow the bamboo rafts to walk among the human figurines. Suddenly, everyone felt that the bamboo raft seemed to be falling a little suddenly, and they were so frightened that they all looked at their feet. Sumu also felt an unpleasant feeling in his heart. Not good. Hubei immediately picked up an unused bamboo pole and put it into the water, preparing to measure the depth of the river here. After he put the bamboo pole into the water, he found that the river here was very deep. After putting the bamboo pole into the water, all of them were submerged, but it didn't feel like they had reached the bottom of the river yet. You can imagine how deep the water is. The water is too deep. Fatty Wang smacked his tongue when he saw Hubei's move. Hubei nodded and stood up, frowning, and said, the water here is too deep, and the river is very cold. If you fall in, you won't be drowned even if you know how to swim. Even if you die, your ability to move will be affected because the river water is too cold. Listening to Hubei's analysis, Shirley Yang and others also felt that something was wrong. Let's not talk about whether they will drown in the water. The water wasps in the water alone are enough to kill them. Sumu frowned in thought, but there were more worries in her heart. Sumu knew that besides those annoying water wasps, there were other things under the water. The terrifying giant python in the original book was enough to scare him, as well as the mysterious creature that he had only seen once and then disappeared. These are most likely hidden in deep water, so the crisis in the water is far more terrifying than everyone imagines. It won't be a problem if this continues, Sumu murmured and asked Hubei to take out the human skin map. The map was spread out and everyone gathered around. Hubei looked at the detailed information on the map carefully, then pointed to a location on the map and said, "Judging from the map, we should have reached this location." Everyone listened carefully and waited for Hubei to continue his analysis. "You see, judging from this human skin map, we have already walked 2/3 of the way to the foot of Zhejiang Mountain. As long as we persist, we should be able to get out soon." Everyone nodded after hearing this, and Fatty Wang even said in surprise, "That's right, as long as we get out of the mountain and onto the shore, we don't have to be afraid of things in the water anymore. So what we have to do now is to speed up and get out of here," Shirley Yang said. But everyone was a little confused. After looking around, Sumu still poured a ladle of cold water on everyone and said, "The water here is too deep. The bamboo pennies can no longer support the bamboo raft. You can only drift slowly along the speed of the current." As soon as these words came out, everyone was silent for a while. The current speed of the water is not very fast. If we move forward at the current speed, we don't know how long it will take to leave the section of water. There are many dangers here. As long as we stay for 1 second longer, everyone will be in greater danger. We have to find a way to leave quickly," Fatty Wang muttered, as if he was about to be overwhelmed. Suddenly, an idea seemed to flash in his mind, and an idea suddenly appeared. "Got it? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 224. Got it? Fatty Wang's eyes lit up, and then he began to rummage through his backpack amidst the doubtful gazes of everyone, and soon found 2 aluminum pots the size of plates from his backpack. "Oh my God, fat man, you still carry this thing in your backpack?" Hubei looked at the small pot in Fatty Wang's hand in shock, with a speechless expression on his face. Fatty Wang chuckled, holding up the small pot, and said, "Isn't this because I'm afraid of sleeping in the wild without even the tools to cook noodles? No, I thought that before the noodles were cooked, they had a new use. Could this be used for paddling?" Sumu also looked at Fatty Wang with a smile. He didn't expect that this guy could have such a strange move at a critical moment. Seeing Sumu nod, Fatty Wang immediately became interested and squatted on the edge of the bamboo raft with a small aluminum pot, and began to paddle the water with the small aluminum pot. Seeing that Fatty Wang was so active, before anyone else could say anything, Hubei also grabbed another aluminum pot, squatted on the other side and started paddling. Fatty Wang, together with Hubei, the bamboo raft, which had been slowing down for a moment, began to accelerate under the combined efforts of the two. Although the small aluminum pot was not very big, it had a long handle and the two small ears are safer to use, and the hands do not need to touch the water, thus avoiding the attacks of water wasps adsorbed on the bottom of the bamboo raft. In this way, with the cooperation of the two, the method is driving fast. At this speed, the rest of the journey can be completed quickly. However, after the bamboo raft drove for a while, the bamboo raft suddenly bumped violently, causing everyone on the bamboo raft to "I couldn't stop my body from stumbling." What happened? What happened? Shirley Yang looked around in panic, but found nothing unusual. The bamboo raft only bumped for a moment, and then immediately returned to normal, as if nothing had happened just now. "Did you scratch something just now?" the peacock asked tremblingly and cautiously. "Did he hit a rock?" Fat Wang stopped what he was doing and looked puzzled. Everyone took a look, but they didn't see any stones in the water. "Wrong." Minayuping looked at the bamboo raft under his feet without saying a word. Sumu did the same, and an unpleasant feeling suddenly arose in his heart. Wow, wow, wow. At the same time, a creepy sound suddenly sounded in the silent cave space. It was a dull sound of heavy metal stirring. Every sound seemed to hit everyone's heart, and it was extremely heavy. What's going on? What is this sound?" Peacock exclaimed. She had been frightened enough by the things she encountered along the way. She was like a frightened bird at this moment. The slightest sound was enough to make her tense up all her nerves, not to mention that the sound was very obvious. When Sumu heard that voice, his whole heart felt as if he had fallen into the cold river in front of him. He sank hard, and a thought kept shouting in his heart. "Not good. This is the bamboo raft that has touched a mechanism in the water." Sumu said in a deep voice, and then regardless of the doubts in other people's eyes, he stepped forward and took the aluminum pot from Hu Ba's hand, and began to paddle quickly in the water. The oil bottle did not lag behind, and went up. I took the aluminum pot from Fatty Wang's hand and started to help. Click, click. The sound of the chain's rotation was still going on. Sumu looked at the people who had not yet reacted and shouted loudly. "What are you still doing? The bamboo raft just triggered the mechanism. Now that the agency is activated, we must get out of here quickly." Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is Fierce and Cute. Chapter 225. Sumu's loud shout brought everyone back to their senses instantly. Although they still didn't know what happened, they knew from the looks of Sumu and Minayuping that something big had happened. Sumu and Minayuping had already taken 2 small aluminum pots. The others had nothing to use, so they started rummaging through their bags to find something they could use. Fortunately, each of them also brought a few foldable shovels, so they all squatted on the edge of the bamboo raft and started paddling together. Click, click. The sound of the chain spinning continued, and an inexplicable sense of urgency slowly began to press on everyone's hearts. Plop, plop, plop. Suddenly, a series of sounds of falling into the water came from different directions. Everyone was startled, but they reacted instantly, with extremely frightened expressions on their faces. "It's the human figurine that fell." Plop, plop. The sound of falling water continued to sound very dense, and everyone immediately took searchlights and shined them in all directions. In the sky above the river, those human figurines were like falling bombs, constantly falling from the sky and hitting the water, making loud noises and splashing high in circles. "Oh my God, why are there so many?" Fat Wang exclaimed, his eyes full of horror. The others also opened their mouths in shock. They felt that their whole hearts were hit by those human figurines, and they were trembling with panic. "Don't stand still, paddle quickly." When Sumu saw everyone looking up at the fallen human figurines with fear, he immediately frowned and shouted. "If we stop here like this, we will easily be hit by those human figurines." Sumu yelled to make everyone come back to their senses, until they really shouldn't stay any longer. Those human figurines are very heavy, and you can tell just by looking at the splashes of those human figurines when they hit the water. After all, there are more than there are corpses made with the evil technique, as well as countless reared water wasps and insect eggs, which are very heavy. If such heavy evil figures were directly hit on the bamboo raft, their bamboo raft would be damaged now. In an overwhelmed state, they would definitely be sunk immediately. At that time, those water wasps would definitely swarm up and bite them to death. Thinking of this, everyone did not dare to continue to hesitate and rowed hard. They stood up. Those figurines were still falling. While rowing the bamboo rafts, everyone occasionally looked around at the human figurines that fell into the water. They could always see that those figurines were the same as the ones that fell into the water first. Like the human figurines, the struggling human figurines scattered countless insect eggs in the water. After those eggs entered the water, they immediately hatched into countless water wasps, and then they grew and expanded rapidly. Damn it! Seeing those densely packed water pigeons swimming quickly towards the direction of the bamboo raft after they hatched, everyone couldn't help but cursed in their hearts, could there be anything better with so many water pigeons? Stroke quickly, don't delay, Shirley Yang loudly reminded everyone that the crisis is approaching now and we must work together to tide over the difficulties. Ah! Suddenly Peacock raised her head and exclaimed. She was holding a flashlight in her hand, and the direction of the light was pointed at the top of her head. Sumu looked over and saw a human figurine heading towards the direction at an extremely fast speed. The peacock below was smashed down. If it was hit, not only the peacock would be injured, but even their bamboo raft would be implicated. At this time, their bamboo raft was already becoming more and more dense due to the increasing number of water bees gathering. It's heavy. If it receives another heavy blow from above, I'm afraid it will sink in an instant. Squat down. At the critical moment, Sumu shouted loudly, picked up the bamboo pole at an extraordinary speed, and then quickly hit the fallen human figurine with the bamboo pole. The peacock shouted out after Sumu squat down, she obediently hugged her head and squatted down. She closed her eyes tightly and did not dare to open them to see what was about to happen. However, she could hear in her ears, a blast like a strong wind. The sound of breaking through the air passed by my ears. Whoosh! Bang! With a beautiful sweep, the fallen figurines were swept away. They flew far away and landed in the water near the edge of the cave. Plop! There was no difference between the sound of other figurines falling into the water, but the only difference was that Sumu and the others walked away from a crisis safely in the blink of an eye. Peacock was still a little frightened, but he still managed to open his eyes. Looking at Sumu's tall figure, in addition to admiration and respect, something seemed to be quietly happening in his heart. Everyone rowed quickly together, and the bamboo raft became faster and faster. The evil figurines above their heads were still falling, like bombs, randomly falling in front of or around them. The artillery fire continued. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 226. Everyone kept dodging the falling figurines, and some of the figurines that fell towards their bamboo rafts were all knocked away by Sumu's sharp eyes and quick hands. There was no serious danger for a while, but they could feel that the weight of the bamboo raft was getting heavier and heavier. This is the result of those water bees swarming up and adsorbing on the bamboo raft. Come on, come on. Shirley Yang urged, without stopping her hands. Even though her hands felt a little sore due to the mechanical force, she still didn't dare to relax. The same was true for others. Because everyone knows that only by leaving this water quickly can everyone have a chance to survive. Hurry, leave this area soon. From a distance, the bright flashlight in Huba's hand was already faintly visible above everyone's heads. Wherever the strong light shines, those terrifying figurines have begun to gradually decrease. It seemed that it was not as dense as before. I saw the river bank in the distance, so I couldn't help but feel excited, so I started to exclaim. The others raised their eyes and saw that the number of the figurines had begun to gradually decrease. In one direction in the distance, there were almost no traces of the figurines there. This means that they can immediately draw out this section of water with human figurine bombs. Everyone's mood suddenly became high. Even the speed that had been gradually slowing down due to soreness in the hands, immediately returned to normal, even faster than before. Ha 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 ha, I am finally getting out of this damn waters, Fat Wang cursed and glanced at the human figurines, unable to hide his excitement. Just when everyone was shouting in their hearts that they could finally leave this human figurine bomb area and were about to escape, something unexpected happened again in the dark depths of the cave ahead. There was an extremely strange sound. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The sound was not very loud, but it could be heard clearly in everyone's ears. Is this the sound of a snake? Shirley Yang suddenly looked at the darkness in front of her with vigilance. She glanced around, but found nothing at all. Shirley Yang didn't like this kind of wet, slippery, and extremely cold creature very much, or maybe she should. It is very disgusting. After all, not every woman can bear the appearance of that terrifying, cold and slippery creature in front of her. Sumu also looked at the dark direction ahead vigilantly, his night eyes seeing more clearly than others. It was clearer from a distance, but he still couldn't see anything under his night eyes. Hiss, hiss. There was another neighing sound. Everyone felt that the sound was like scraping glass with a knife. It made people's scalp numb and their hairs standing on end. It's a snake, it must be the sound of a snake. Hubei also heard the sound, but he felt confused mid-sentence and murmured, this sound is so loud, could it be a group of snakes? A bunch of snakes, Fat Wang exclaimed. A scene of a group of snakes surrounding them appeared in his mind, and then he shuddered violently, feeling a little bad all over his body. Where is the snake? Fat Wang took the flashlight and shined it on the surrounding rock walls. He just shined for a long time and couldn't see the shadow of half a snake, let alone a group of snakes. Lao Hu, did you hear it wrong? Where did a group of snakes come from? Fatty Wang shouted. Before Hubei could answer, Sumu directly denied it. It's not a group of snakes, but only one snake. A snake. Everyone was shocked when these words came out. They all heard how loud the hissing sound was. They could believe it was a group of snakes, but if it was just a sound made by one snake, then this snake should have how huge. I can't imagine such a scene. Everyone's eyes were full of shock. Ding. A falling attribute light group was detected nearby. Will the host pick it up? Suddenly, the system prompt that had not appeared for a long time sounded again. Sumu opened the pickup bar with a sudden thought, and found out that it was the attributes dropped by those water hive bees. Unexpectedly, such a small water hive bee, also it was somewhat beyond Sumu's expectation that a light group with attributes would fall out. Without having time to think about it, Sumu directly chose to pick it up. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the speed attribute light group of water swallow bee, skill value x1. Ding. Congratulations to the host for getting. Sumu didn't have time to check how many attribute points he had increased, but he could feel a slight change in his physique. At this moment, there were still figurines falling around everyone, and there was also an unknown threat that looked like a giant snake in front of them. This made everyone hesitate for a while, not knowing what to do. Sumu listened carefully and heard the sound of the giant snake getting closer and closer to everyone. He was also very anxious, but stopping here was not an option now. Seeing that everyone slowed down, Sumu quickly urged, don't stop. After hearing this, everyone didn't care about anything else and started rowing. No matter what, they had to click to open the figurine bomb area. Bang. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 227. Bang. Sumu knocked another figurine away with a stick. However, there were also figurines nearby that fell very close to each other. The splashes were half a meter high, and almost all of them splashed on everyone. Fortunately, those splashes there were no water wasps, otherwise they would have suffered. The speed of the bamboo raft did not slow down much under the combined efforts of everyone. But the bombs of human figurines above their heads kept falling, and the ones in front of them in the corner of the cave, there was the sound of falling gravel from time to time. Everyone shined lights on it, but they could only vaguely see a huge black shadow, and the huge creature was at the edge of the cave. The rock edge is moving quickly, getting closer and closer. Do we still want to continue? I seem to have seen the shadow of that thing just now. Peacock spoke tremblingly, looking at the darkness ahead as if he could see the unknown huge creature, and his face turned pale with fright. If you don't move on, are you going to wait here? Shirley Yang snorted coldly. Peacock did not remain silent because of Shirley Yang's indifference. Instead, he continued, but there is something in front, it's big and scary. Just as Shirley Yang was about to continue speaking, Hu Bei also said there is no way to survive if you stay here. Have you seen the water wasps behind? Hu Bei pointed towards the back of the bamboo raft. Everyone immediately looked around and saw that countless water bees had gathered behind their bamboo raft. They didn't know when they opened their mouths. Those water bees were crowded together, trying to catch up with the bamboo raft and stick to it. The peacock was so frightened by those disgusting water wasps that he screamed. Even Mi Nayuping, who had always been silent and calm, was now frowning in disgust at the dense water wasps. If we stop here, those water pigeons will drag our bamboo raft down sooner or later. Then you can imagine how it feels to be among those water pigeons. I can't accept it anyway. As soon as Hu Bei said this, he reached out and rubbed his arms as if he had thought of something. His expression was indescribable. Others seemed to have thought of the same scene and shuddered. I don't want to stay here anymore, the peacock screamed, almost breaking down and crying. No one thinks there is anything wrong with her being like this. Even they themselves have collapsed a little about the situation at this time. There are dangers both before and after. No matter which path is chosen, the outcome will be full of dangers. We must go on, Sumu said, and the firmness in his voice made everyone feel as if a reassurance had been buried in their hearts, giving them a little bit of peace of mind. After these days of getting along with each other, they had already developed a good understanding of Sumu's ability. I understand to a certain extent that as long as he is around, there is still a way to survive. Staying here is a dead end, but going on may not mean there is no way to survive. Instead of facing countless water wasps, it would be better to go down and face that unknown creature. Sumu felt that although the strength of the giant python was unknown, it was obvious that these large numbers of water bees were even more disgusting. After everyone discussed it, they quickly made a decision, and everyone agreed to continue moving forward, even in the face of unknown dangers. Huge python, but at least there is only one python. Everyone, please work harder and get out of this water area as soon as possible. Hu Bei shouted loudly and encouraged everyone. Don't be afraid, everyone. There are many of us. No matter how big the giant python is, it can only reach the sky as thick as a bucket. With so many of us, we can't beat a giant python as big as a bucket snake. As soon as these words came out, everyone seemed to have figured it out. Although they were still a little scared, they still gritted their teeth and continued rowing the bamboo raft to speed up. Everyone was rowing the bamboo raft while avoiding the figurine bombs. From time to time, Sumu helped everyone shoot away some human figurine bombs that fell overhead. But as the human figurine bombs fell into the water, more and more water wasps were following the bamboo rafts, and the entire water surface was almost gone. They are all densely covered with water wasps. A lot of water bees have been sucked up to the bottom of the bamboo raft, and the entire bamboo raft has gained a lot of weight. If those water bees are also sucked up, it will be maybe the bamboo raft will sink immediately. We must think of a way. Fatty Wang looked at the water wasps chasing them quickly, and suddenly an idea flashed in his mind. He didn't hesitate, and immediately took out a portable flamethrower from his backpack. Others were amazed when they saw it. "Fatty, how many weird things do you have in your bag?" Hubei exclaimed. Fatty Wang chuckled twice and said nothing. With a bad smile on his face, he walked directly to the end of the bamboo raft and pointed the nozzle of the flamethrower at the water pigs chasing after him. Swarm, and then directly turned on the switch. Boom! In an instant, a powerful column of flames with scorching heat directly enveloped the water surface full of water bees. The high-temperature flames instantly vaporized countless mist when they came into contact with the water. At the same time, those densely packed water bees were also burned to death in the high-temperature flames, and then slowly sank to the bottom of the water. "Ha ha ha ha, fuck, you are still chasing us!" Fatty Wang yelled with curses in his mouth. He held a flamethrower in his hand and kept burning it towards the water surface to kill the water wasps that kept coming up and prevent them from adhering to the bamboo raft and sinking it. On the water, water pigeons were being burned to death, and then other water pigeons swarmed to fill in the gap. Fatty Wang was very busy. Others also took advantage of the little time they bought. They rowed the bamboo raft with all their strength. Everyone worked together and finally escaped the attack of the figurine bombs. They rowed out of the frightening waters and entered an area that seemed calmer than before. Why is the sound just now gone? Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 228. Why is the sound just now gone? Shirley Yang carefully discovered the changes in the sounds in the surrounding environment and wondered. At this moment, the bamboo raft had entered the place where they heard the hissing sound before, and everyone was alert to the huge giant in the darkness. While walking around the python, they suddenly discovered that the cave had become unusually quiet at this moment. The hissing sound that everyone heard before had disappeared without a trace, as if it was all their hallucination before. People have to wonder if the sound they heard before really existed. Everyone listened carefully. In this deep and dark environment, it seemed that they could even hear each other's breathing clearly, but the sound before I couldn't hear anything. Not only was the hissing sound gone, but even the sound of gravel falling was gone, said Shirley Young. Could it be that the thing has left? Fat Wang said softly. Shhh. Hubei made a silencing gesture towards Fatty Wang, and then pointed in the direction of Sumu. At this moment, Sumu was staring intently into the darkness ahead, his ears slightly tilted, as if he was listening to something. No one spoke, and even the breathing slowed down a bit. Sumu was listening carefully. He didn't believe that the giant python would leave. He only thought that the giant python was just hiding and preparing to make a surprise attack on them. In his ears, every tiny sound seemed to be amplified countless times at this moment, constantly constructing a magical and unfamiliar map of the environment in Sumu's mind. He could rely on the direction of the sound and airflow to know the little bug crawling in the darkness ahead can also know the fatal crisis hidden in the darkness, waiting for an opportunity. No, nothing. Did he really leave? Sumu was suspicious and murmured distrustfully. Seeing that Sumu did not continue to listen, everyone thought that the giant python had left here as they had guessed, and they couldn't help but feel relieved. It's finally safe. Fatty Wang sat down on the bamboo raft. Although there were still a lot of water wasps adsorbed on the bottom of the bamboo raft, because Fatty Wang had burned many of them to death with a flamethrower before, it didn't look as good as before. It's so heavy, even the draft position is slightly raised. Wow! Suddenly, a sound so small that it was almost negligible came to Sumu's ears. It was the sound of the water being cut open. It was so ordinary that it hardly attracted anyone's attention. However, Sumu suddenly frowned. Lock, his eyes suddenly became wary. Sumu looked fiercely in the direction of the sound. The scene he saw under his night eyes was completely beyond Sumu's imagination. Sumu knew that there was a giant python in the original novel, but the one in front of him was completely different from what he knew. In the dark cave ahead, I saw a huge black python entrenched in the river. The diameter of the black python was more than 1 meter long. The snake body was entangled together and almost occupied most of the river. At first glance, it looked at least it was dozens of meters long, and the python's body was covered with black snake scales. Under the light of the flashlight, the scales seemed to glow with a metallic luster. The most terrifying thing is the head of the giant python, which is not much worse than a small car. It has a pair of brown vertical pupils as big as lanterns, cold and full of animality, extremely terrifying. Hiss, hiss. The huge tongue sticks out from the python's mouth and makes a terrible hissing sound. It is thicker than a hemp rope. It seems that with just a slight roll, it can directly trap people firmly. Ah! The peacock was so frightened that he screamed. His hands trembled violently, trying to grab the person next to him, but he felt that the soles of his feet were so weak that he could not even move a step. The others were not much better. Seeing the huge python in front of them, they were frightened to death. Chapter 182. The peacock's scream suddenly stopped because Shirley Yang beside her directly covered her mouth. Everyone was staring at the giant python, and the giant python seemed to be staring at them. Neither side made any move. Sumu and the others didn't move because of fear, but the giant python stopped there and didn't make any move for some unknown reason. What kind of snake is this? How can it be so big? Fatty Wang asked in a low voice, the slight trembling in his voice showing the panic and fear in his heart. Who can not be afraid? Who can remain calm in the face of such a terrifying behemoth? Even Sumu was also frightened at this time. After hearing Fatty Wang's question, Hu Ba thought for a moment and said, "This is the first time I have seen such a big snake. Even the giant anacondas I know of today are probably not this big." Giant anaconda? What is that? Fat Wang asked. Shirley Yang heard the words and explained it is a branch of the python species. It is the longest and largest snake species known today. Someone once discovered a snake in the primeval forest of Indonesia. The 19-meter-long giant python was the longest known python at that time. It cost a lot of money to kill it, and this one was obviously much longer than that one. Damn it, so awesome. So is this the largest giant anaconda in the world? I heard that there is another kind of giant python called titanoboa. It should be regarded as one of the largest giant pythons in the world. It is bigger than the giant anaconda. The shortest kind of giant python can be more than 10 meters in length. This one is at least as long as it's 40 or 50 meters, maybe even longer. Titanoboa. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 229. Titanoboa. Everyone exclaimed. They didn't expect that there was such a terrifying creature in the world. Sumu knew how scary this giant python was, so he kept staring at the giant python intently at this moment, never taking his eyes away. Hearing other people talked about the origin of this giant python, and also thought about how to deal with this terrifying giant python. It's over, we're really going to end up here this time. Fatty Wang looked at the behemoth in the distance and couldn't help but feel discouraged. Although Shirley Yang wanted to say some words of encouragement, she opened her mouth but found that nothing could come out. What else can be said? Can they really defeat the giant python in front of them? Now they can only wait for the giant python to pounce on them and swallow them in one bite. Just when everyone's morale was falling again and again, Sumu suddenly said, "Don't be discouraged yet, we may not have a chance to get out alive." After hearing this, everyone immediately raised their heads and looked at Sumu. At this time, Sumu was still looking at each other with the giant python. The figure with his back to everyone now looked extraordinarily tall in everyone's eyes. Even Menyuping, who had always been taciturn and prided himself on his ability, felt timid when facing such a huge python, but he didn't expect that Sumu was still so high-spirited. Menyuping looked at Sumu's back with admiration, his eyes burning. "What else can we do now?" "Who?" Ba calmed down his uneasy heart and asked calmly. Sumu replied, "We still have time to think of a solution. The giant python has not planned to attack us yet." After hearing what Sumu said, everyone realized. They were supposed to be buried in the mouth of the giant python when they were discovered by it, but now they are still standing here unscathed. It is exactly what Sumu said. The giant python in front really seemed to be observing something, and had no intention of launching an attack. Everyone found that the eyes of the giant python seemed to have spirituality, and when it looked at them, its eyes were cold and cold. In addition, there is also this trace of humanized banter. Come on, come up with a solution now." Fat Wang saw this situation and hurriedly cheered up. Who would be willing to give up if there is a chance to survive? Not only Fatty Wang was unwilling, but others were also unwilling. So everyone started to use their brains quickly. After thinking about it, I wondered what kind of method could be used to deal with such a huge monster. The river in front was occupied by the giant python, and most of the water flow was blocked by the huge body of the giant python. At this time, there was no artificial assistance from Sumu and others to paddle. The bamboo raft was no longer driven by the water flow. The bamboo raft just stopped in the middle of the river. If it weren't for the slow movement speed, everyone would think that they were stagnant. "We must work together to deal with it at the same time, and we must strike first," Hubei said. Menyuping nodded and added, "It's not easy to pay too much for that giant python. It has rough skin and thick flesh. If you look at the scales on its body, you can scrape off a big stone directly from the stone wall." Everyone took a look, and just as Menyuping said, the giant python was circling in place, and a lot of gravel fell down where it kept scraping against the stone wall. Moreover, part of the snake's body was buried in the water, and even those sword-toothed salmon that appeared again at some unknown time were unable to bite the scales on their bodies, which shows how hard the scales on their bodies are. "It's so thick, can we fight? With such thick scales, I'm afraid even bullets can't kill it." Shirley Yang frowned. Among them, Hubei had led troops and fought in battles, so he still had some ideas for how to arrange this row of troops. He thought for a while and said, "As I just said, we must strike first and mobilize all our troops. At that time, Sumu and Brother Zhang will find ways to attract its attention outside, and we will go to the giant python and blow it up with explosives." This method works. Fat Wang's eyes lit up and he clapped his hands. Sumu and Menyuping said that this method can be tried. They can find a way to hold down the giant python. Shirley Yang naturally agreed. As for the peacock, her opinion, it's just dispensable. Seeing that everyone agreed to his arrangement, Hubei continued to add. "Also, we cannot launch an attack here. We must first lead the giant python to a wider place. Otherwise, if the giant python pounces directly on us in such a narrow place, it may swallow us directly in one bite. By then we won't even be able to hide." After hearing this, everyone nodded hurriedly after thinking about the scene. Hubei quickly discussed some specific details with everyone, and then quickly divided the work. Then he turned the bamboo raft in a decisive direction and began to row towards a wider river. Seeing the direction of the bamboo raft, the giant python also started to move. However, just when everyone was terrified that the giant python would rush towards them, they found that the giant python didn't seem to pay much attention to them, and just followed them at an unhurried pace. It seems that they are treating them as lambs to be slaughtered, and they are admiring the prey's last struggle before death. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 230. The giant python was very slow, and it looked like it was swimming very casually, as if it didn't even pay attention to Sumyu's bamboo raft. Or maybe he was just playing with Sumyu and the others as if they were his prey. This often happens in nature. That is, a powerful creature will often not directly kill prey that is much weaker than itself. Instead, it will slowly tease and play with it until it loses all interest in the prey. Only then will he end the life of his prey without any hesitation. At this moment, Sumyu and the others seemed to realize that they were being played by the giant python. It wandered carelessly, and its hard scales would scrape off a pile of gravel from the cave wall from time to time. It had been looking at the bamboo rafts floating on the river in front of it, as well as the tiny humans on the rafts, as if they were looking at toys that could amuse it. The sword-toothed salmon in the river kept swimming around it, sometimes approaching and sometimes moving away, as if they were testing something. Some eyeless sword-toothed salmon would try to bite off a piece of flesh from its body. However, the sharp teeth that the sword-toothed salmon is proud of cannot even bite through the scales on its body. In addition to those annoying knife-toothed salmon in the river, there is another creature that can make the python look at it a few more times, and that is those densely packed water wasps. The python is naturally capable of restraining water wasps. Those water wasps that can suck a person dry in an instant are no match for the python. To Sumyu and the others, the water wasps, which were extremely difficult to deal with and disgusting, were just delicious snacks in the eyes of the giant python. When the giant python swam slowly, the water wasps that were swimming towards the bamboo raft were mostly swallowed by the giant python when they passed by. It is like a master walking in his own back garden, roaming freely in this originally dangerous river, and will take a bite in the water from time to time. With just one bite, countless water wasps will be swallowed by him. This is too cruel. When Fatty Wong turned back, he happened to see the giant python preying on the water pigeons in the water. Those water pigeons that almost made their scalp numb with nausea, had no power to fight back when facing the giant python. Sumyu looked back and saw the same scene. However, he discovered that even when the giant python was eating the water bees, a pair of terrifying snake eyes were still staring at the group of them. That feeling, it's just like. Damn it, is that giant python watching us eat? Fat Wong suddenly cursed with righteous indignation. Sumyu's mind also instantly understood, and he understood how he felt at that first glance. Sure enough, after Fatty Wong's reminder, when Sumyu went to see the giant python again, I felt like I had become a staple food in the eyes of the other party. I saw the giant python taking a bite from the water from time to time, but the pair of snake eyes was always staring at them. It felt like it's like eating an appetizer. In the eyes of the python, this group of people is like a rare feast. There must always be a sense of ritual before eating the feast. It seems that it waits until it eats the appetizer. When they are almost ready, they will start to eat these staple foods. Hold. This thing can't become a sperm. Hubei couldn't help but cursed when he was stared at by those eager eyes. Fatty Wong also nodded when he heard this and said, I also feel that this thing has probably become a spirit, maybe even the inner elixir. Yes. The speaker is unintentional, but the listener is intentional. When Sumyu heard the conversation between Hubei and Fatty Wong, his heart suddenly moved, and his eyes when looking at the giant python also changed slightly. If this giant python is really, it is an unexpected blessing to become a spirit and have the inner elixir. As long as he obtains the inner elixir of the giant python, it means that he can further unlock his bloodline, so that his strength can taking it to the next level. Thinking of this, Sumyu's heart began to beat wildly, and he was very much looking forward to the next hunt for the giant python. Come on, now that it doesn't want to touch us, "Let's row the bamboo raft to the spacious river," Sumu commanded. After hearing this, everyone rowed the bamboo raft harder, and soon the raft was rowed to a relatively more open river. The giant python was still swimming leisurely in the river, and from time to time they would catch some water wasps from the water to eat, and they seemed not to pay much attention to Sumu and the others. However, everyone knew that this was just because the python was very confident. It knew that the humans in front of it were as weak as ants. There was no way to escape from it, so they were so arrogant and let them go. Soon, the water wasps that were originally densely packed in this water area were quickly eaten by the giant python. This is good news for everyone. At least after dealing with the giant python, they no longer have to face so many dense and disgusting things. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 231. After eating the water pigbees, the giant python finally turned its attention to Sumu and his party. It was obvious that even though the giant python had eaten so many water pigbees, it did not fill its stomach. At this time, Sumu and the others had rowed the bamboo raft to a place where the river was wider than the previous place. This was the place where there were relatively many figurines. However, now that the bamboo rafts triggered the trap, almost all of the evil figurines have fallen into the water. All that remains here are the thick iron chains used to lock the figurines above the river. Sumu looked around and finally decided on the place to deal with the giant python. The giant python is still eating the water wasp leisurely at this moment. Taking advantage of the current safe time, everyone quickly rowed the bamboo raft to a corner of the shallows along the coast and hid it. Even if there was a fight later, the raft would not be affected at this location. Peacock was left to guard the bamboo raft. She was just an ordinary person. After facing so many dangers, it was already good to be able to stand strong. Naturally, she could no longer be allowed to participate in such dangerous things, and she couldn't help. Busy. After assigning the tasks, Shirley Yang, Hubei and Fatty Wang went to the shoal and started looking for bunkers to hide. Sumu and Mi Na Yuping were the first to come out to attract the python's attention, and then gave Shirley Yang they create a good opportunity to attack it. Boom. At this moment, the giant python had eaten the water wasps until they were almost destroyed, and a pair of snake eyes finally fell on Sumu and Mi Na Yuping in front. At this moment, Sumu and Mi Na Yuping were taking out their hooks and throwing them violently over the river. Clang, clang. Two sounds of gold and iron mingling sounded, and the two claws hooked tightly on the thick iron chain network crisscrossing above the river. Sumu and Mi Na Yuping looked at each other, and then in perfect agreement it started to climb up the iron chain net quickly. The giant python raised its head and swallowed the water wasp it just caught from the water. Then its snake eyes were directly attracted to Sumu and Mi Na Yuping. Hurry, now. Looking up at the huge snake head that was spitting out messages, a pair of vertical pupils staring closely at Sumu and Mi Na Yuping, Hubei waved to Shirley Yang and Fatty Wang and urged them in a low voice. The three of them moved very quickly. They rushed out after just a few starts and found a suitable bunker at the edge of the shoal. At this time, Sumu and Mi Na Yuping had climbed onto the iron chain net, and the giant python was also approaching their position. The iron chains intertwined above the river are not very thin, but rather like a single plank bridge, enough for one person to walk on it. Although it is very swaying, as long as you have good balance, it is not a problem to walk on it freely. Sumu glanced at Hubei's position, and then directly took out the explosives that Fatty Wang gave him. Only Fatty Wang would think of bringing a lot of these things, but they can always be used when they are needed. Bang! Suddenly, a loud noise came from the cave, accompanied by waves of deafening echoes. That was when Fatty Wang took advantage of the giant python to focus on Sumu and the others, and found the flaw left, and then directly he threw an explosive towards the giant python. The loud noise was accompanied by the billowing smoke. However, when the smoke dispersed, Fatty Wang was shocked to find that the giant python was unscathed, except for the presence of signs on its scales. Just a little burnt. Hiss. The giant python didn't seem to expect that there would be ants trying to attack it. When it turned around and spit out the snake letter and touched the place where the black mark was blasted, it suddenly opened its mouth towards Fatty Wang and the others. Screamed violently. Suffered. Fatty Wang, Hubei and Shirley Yang saw that the giant python was trying to turn around and change its route. Their hearts sank at the same time, and they all screamed secretly. But the next second, a muffled sound came from the giant python. There was a sound next to the python. "Hey, where is that shit going?" Sumu pulled it off the rock wall and threw the stone the size of a human head towards the giant python, while loudly mocking the giant python. If this giant python is really spiritual, it is impossible not to understand. He yelled and cursed. Sure enough, the stone hit the giant python's head directly. Because Sumu threw it very hard, the stone exploded directly on the giant python's head. It was originally provoked by Fatty Wang and his explosives. The giant python that arrived turned its attention to Sumu again at this moment, but this time there was no disapproving indifference in the snake eyes, but a cold and bloodthirsty hunting light. Hiss. The giant python began to move forward faster, because Fatty Wang and the others were already hiding behind the bunker. The giant python lost its target in its eyes, so it could only direct all its anger towards Sumu and the others. Swish swish. The giant python's huge body began to swim quickly in the river, but because of its huge size, once it moved, the surrounding cave seemed to tremble slightly with its movements, and the water in the river also moved with it. With the movement, it seemed as if it was split open, and two waves separated. In the river, countless saber-toothed salmon were alarmed by the giant python, and they rushed out one after another, and then surrounded the giant python. They wanted to bite the giant python's body with their long mouths, but the scales of the giant python were too hard, even if they were a group of sword-toothed salmon surrounded them, but they still had no way to deal with the giant python. Sumu and Mi Yiping stood on the iron chain net, ready to face the fierce attack of the giant python. Bang! The stuffy oil bottle directly threw an explosive on the giant python's head. However, the explosive, which was enough to break a huge boulder, was thrown on the giant python's head. After the explosion, it only blew away a few pieces of the scales on the head. That's all. It didn't hurt the giant python, but only angered it even more. Careful! Sumu watched the giant python raise its huge head and bite directly towards Mi Yiping. He was so shocked that he immediately reminded him. Mi Yiping reacted very quickly. When the giant python bit the snake's head, he immediately jumped. Leaped directly from where he was originally standing to another chain. Because the iron chain network is crisscrossed and intertwined, the snake's head biting one iron chain also caused the other iron chains to shake together. He stood up. After Mi Yiping leaped over, he almost lost his balance due to the shaking of the chain, and the giant python head was already chasing after Mi Yiping's position. Sumu's eyes narrowed, he took out his gun and shot at Snake Eye's position. With a bang, the bullets flew out quickly. However, as if the python could quickly predict the crisis, the snake's head suddenly turned to a position and directly blocked the bullet with the back of the snake's head. Clang!